Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed Nader, and tonight we will be focusing on Egypt's role in the United Nations activities all over the world, and more specifically in the Middle East historically and as an establishing member as well of the United Nations, the activities of the UN in Egypt, in the Middle East and in Africa in cooperation with Egypt. We will be having a quick look as well about the latest activities of the presidential activities of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, which took place on Saturday, or more specifically in the past couple of days. One of them was the meeting of President al-Sisi with a number of leaders and officials concerned with the industrializing or the localizing of industry here in the country before the month of Ramadan, and to be controlling the prices as well before the holy month of Ramadan. But we'll be having top stories for today, and on Sunday the presidential activities of President al-Sisi come within three different meetings or three different activities. One of them comes in the space of Africa. The bilateral cooperation between Egypt and Africa in general, and more specifically between Egypt and Uganda. The main top story for today comes as President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi held a meeting with Uganda's commander of the land forces, Muhoozi Museveni. President al-Sisi asserted that the path of cooperation, construction and development leads to success, prosperity and the settlements for disputes and crises. The president expressed keenness on fostering the distinguished ties between Egypt and Uganda and boosting the joint military cooperation, praising the two countries' efforts in supporting the African issues. The meeting also tackled enhancing cooperative capabilities between the Nile Basin countries and Africa, and intensifying consultation over the current challenges facing the Black Continent. That is the first main top story for today, and it comes from the meeting of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi with a number of Ugandan officials and the accompanying delegation as well, to be having better relations between Egypt and Uganda in the near future. The other one comes from the meeting of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, but with Lebanese officials on the Arab front this time, as President al-Sisi met with the Lebanese Cardinal Mer Boutros, the Patriarch of Antioch and all the East for Maronites, on Sunday. During the meeting, President al-Sisi stressed Egypt's keenness on restoring security and stability in Lebanon and achieving a national reconciliation to avoid the risks of regional conflicts. The president also praised the role of the Cardinal Boutros in supporting Lebanon's peace. For his part, the Cardinal expressed appreciation for the Egyptian support to Lebanon to reach stability in its territories and in the Arab region as well. And the final top story from the presidential activities of President al-Sisi on Sunday comes from the local scene. As I mentioned, that we'll be having a report about the localizing of industries and to be having safety in the market, especially regarding the prices of the commodities. Today, President al-Sisi instructed an immediate preparation for a package of financial and social protection measures to ease the world economic repercussions on the citizens. President al-Sisi's directives came during a meeting held with a number of concerning parties, during which the president was briefed on the general budget of the fiscal year 2022-23. The meeting also tackled the latest economic achievements amid the coronavirus pandemic. Prime Minister Mostafa, the Minister of Finance Mohammed Maid, the Minister of Social Solidarity Naveen El-Qabbaj, and the head of the Social Insurance National Authority Gamal Awad attended the meeting. So we will be heading to the first report of the daily debate for tonight, which focuses on the local commodities here in the Egyptian market, specifically before the holy month of Ramadan, as President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi held a meeting on Saturday to be focusing on that issue for the Egyptian citizen. We will be having more details in the upcoming report.
Urged localizing the industry and technology regarding the construction and infrastructure sectors as he met with ministers and top government officials on Saturday. A presidential statement said that the meeting discussed the direct impact of industry localization with the participation of the business community in various development sectors on implementation rates and support for the comprehensive development process in the country. During the meeting, President al-Sisi was briefed on the progress regarding a number of construction projects in the new administrative capital east of Cairo. The President was also updated on the executive status of the Egypt International City for Olympic Games. The President reviewed progress of the new roads and access projects constructed nationwide, including Dar es Salaam Access, the extends over the Nile River in Upper Egypt Sohag Governorate with a length of 28 kilometers. President al-Sisi was also briefed on efforts to develop airports in South Sinai, especially the airports of Sharm el-Sheikh, At-Tur and St. Catherine, as well as Hurghada Airport. This is beside the development of the entrance and roads in Sharm el-Sheikh, which is scheduled to host the UN Climate Change Conference 2022 COP27 in November. The President's advisor for urban planning, Amir Sayyid Ahmed, head of the Armed Forces Engineering Authority, Ehab al-Far, director of the Armed Forces Survey Department, Khalid Fawzi, and assistant to the head of the Engineering Authority for Research and Development, Sharif Mazak, attended the meeting.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and I'm honored to be having with me over the program for tonight Dr. Mostafa Ibrahim, the former senior advisor to the Minister of Investment. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate.
Thank you. My pleasure being with you.
Anytime. The pleasure is all mine. First of all, we'll be focusing on the report that we just saw on the Daily Debate for tonight. The activities of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi on Saturday and the meeting to be discussing the localizing of industry and technology here in the country. What is the importance of such a step and the timing of it?
You know, after achieving, a severe fiscal and monetary program that lasted for the last 3 years, Egypt started to look at restructuring and applying a restructural reform of the Egyptian economy, moving forward to support the industry and the SME sector. That's why these activities have become very important. Under the President Sisi movements inside. For the last 3 years and the coming years, supporting the industry to boom up and supporting the manufacturers to boom and grow, to meet the local market needs and as well as the Egyptian strategy to target more than 45 million US dollars of Egyptian exports to the external markets. That's why these activities are very important. To show that the government of Egypt is supporting the private sector to boom up and to grow more and more.
Mm-hmm. What are the sectors that we aim to be having a bit more of localizing in terms of industry and technology that is the priority for us now?
You know, just the car component industry is very important. That has been under the scope and the priority of the Egyptian government to support during the coming years, as well as the fintech sector is one of the booming sectors that has been doing very well in the last 3 years. That's why many acquisitions and mergers happened during the last 2 years after COVID-19. Giving an importance giving importance to this sector, as it has become one of the most influential and growing sectors during the last 3 years, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the meeting also tackled the construction of a number of new buildings and parts of the new capital, the new administrative capital. The importance of, first of all, having a new capital in terms even of drawing more investments, foreign direct investments from the outside world to Egypt. What is the importance of having a new capital altogether, a new administrative capital, the new buildings, the new bridges, the new roads, the new cities that we are seeing nowadays?
I mean, this is a strategy of Egypt that has started in 2014. To build the new Egypt, I mean, under the new republic, focusing on construction of many smart cities with the fourth generation. Started with, I mean, the new admin capital, New Alamein, New Mansoura, and other cities around Egypt. This is one of the what we call thematic sectors, thematic projects that lead the economy. In that time, Egypt was facing an economic crisis, and that's why Egypt moved to having such mega projects to boom the economy and to attract other sectors to be under these sectors to boom up as well, and to decrease the unemployment rates in that exceeded, I mean, 13% during 2011 to 2014, trying to achieve how to look for other resources of money out of the budget to help the economy to grow up.
Doctor, if you could give me the point of view of the investor, the potential investor, when he sees what is happening here in Egypt in the past 7 or 8 years, building a new capital, building a number of cities all over the country, having new infrastructure like roads and bridges and leading to parts that we couldn't go to
let's
before.
See what the investor wants to look for.
Yes.
You start to look at the macro picture with the political and security stability. This is very important. Then it looks at, I mean, the macroeconomic picture. That's why Egypt focused in the last, 5 years to rebalance the economy and to get, certificates from all international institutions in the financial sector that Egypt has been doing very well in this sector, and it's coming. A kind of, you have to look at Egypt as one of the countries is booming and has potential to grow up. And these certificates called what we call the certificates that you need to convince the investors around the world that you are doing very well. If you go to them directly and present yourself that you are doing very well, they will see that what are the evidence that you have. That's why, having these certificates from several international institutions, whether the World Bank, IMF, and other rating companies who are working in the financial sector around the world, are very important to give this good image about the Egyptian economy, and it has a potential to grow up in several sectors. And the mega projects showed that. Egypt is doing very well by having, all these infrastructure projects around there, because infrastructure are called enablers to the business environment. That's why are very important to have these projects around booming and growing and giving good signals to the Egyptian economy.
And in terms of investments or potential investments, we have those steps now that when any other investor sees, he could be coming and investing his money and risking his money.
If we didn't see the challenge that came from COVID-19 and what happens currently from the Russian-Ukrainian crisis, the situation would much be better if we don't see these challenges around. But anyway, still the investors are looking for potential opportunities around the world, and Egypt it's now currently on what we call the investment map of several investors that were coming in the last, before the crisis, just came for many visits. As we see that in the oil and gas sector, we have seen many investors came to Egypt and to explore what the business opportunities that we have in this sector as well. On the other side, the real estate sector, construction sector, witnessed many investors from the Gulf region in the last 3 years to come invest in this sector. Anyway, regarding the trend that we have been facing, these trends have delayed. The growth. The pace of the economic growth. That this is happening in many countries, but this will not. Last forever. And we will see, again, the process of growing again will come back again, and we see other activities around coming and investors coming and see other potentiality in the market.
Yes. During the same meeting, President Assisi probed the means of having an international Olympic village or an Olympic city within the new administrative capital, investing in sports. This is a new term here in Egypt, and we saw it in football, for example, in a number of football clubs. What is the future of this step?
Investing in sports is very important. I have been calling for this, as one of the potentiality that investors are looking for from the past. It's called one of the supporting arms that will encourage investment in several areas. Why? Because sports is very, very attractive to everybody around the world. And in 2010, I was calling for a match between Brazil and Egypt to just to encourage, and to increase the awareness about the Egyptian economy at that time. Everybody else is following up all the competition around the world in football and other games and all this stuff. Egypt organized many competitions, during the last years. And it succeeded to have it, from an organization point of view, was very successful. And it gained a very good image about what's happening in Egypt. I call this one of the marketing arms that you should follow and apply in your economic path, actually.
To be investing in Upper Egypt, because that was one of the main points that were discussed during the meeting yesterday, to be investing in the governorate such as Sohag, for example, how do you see the importance of this step, because it was abandoned for a number of years or decades here in the country?
That's why during the 5 years, the government have been focusing on improving, the business environment in Upper Egypt governorates and giving some importance, under decent life program that to enhance the lives of the Egyptian citizens in different Upper Egypt governorates. I saw that myself when I saw people are participating in gathering the info about the project that need to direct the government investment to. I saw the enthusiasm among the people living in Upper Egypt, how they cooperate with each other to get data and info about this project that should be promoted the government to invest in and to enhance their lives. Many of government investments have been directed to these sectors. In the infrastructure side, waste management, electricity, roads, and other areas have been got the focus during the last 5 years, which I saw that on the ground, and saw that in the eyes of people living in these areas.
Yes, you mentioned the people. That is a very important factor of a Decent Life initiative, all the efforts by the government and the cabinet and the political leadership under President Assisi to be enhancing the lives of people here in Egypt, and more specifically, as we focus now, the people in Upper Egypt. How can we be changing the lives of the people of Upper Egypt that, in a way, it is an investment for the future? I think that investment isn't just about money or economy. It's about changing the mindset as well to be getting more benefits in the future for the country.
Yes, you are making kind of just improving the business, the environment of the Egyptian people working in these living in these governorates, supporting businesses working there, trying to direct initiatives, local initiatives to these areas to enhance, the living standards and the business environment and other stuff. These are very important to get them involved, as a partners in having this kind of local development inside these governorates. I saw this, in different villages that many villages have participated by 50% to have infrastructure projects being put on the ground. And they witnessed that on the ground. I saw this, how supportive they are on the ground, having these, this kind of partnership between the government and the civil society as well as people on the ground.
Egypt will be hosting in the month of November the COP27 regarding the climate change in the world, and more specifically, this is the first time for Egypt, the Middle East and Africa to be hosting such a huge summit. How do you see the importance of hosting this summit, especially that the preparations for hosting the COP27 were discussed during the meeting as well, to be preparing the airports and the installation?
This is among our approach to have international events in Egypt. This I call strengthening the image about Egypt everywhere in the world. Having this summit, this year and next November, to talk about the climate change, global warming, and sustainable development. Why? Because there is $100 billion have been pledged to decrease the impact of global warming and climate change. And we should benefit from that because, I mean, many challenges have been raised to the developing countries upon the pollution and other climate change impact happened by the developed countries, and they're trying to mitigate, I mean, the impact of climate change and global warming that happened to the developing countries. Let's see, Mathan, what Boris Johnson said in the last summit about some cities will be
disappearing,
will sink underwater. One of them, Alexandria. He highlighted that Alexandria, Miami, Alexandria, Shanghai. Many citizens will be affected by the climate change and global warming. If the global warming increased by 4 degrees, I mean, these cities will witness, I mean, might disappear underwater. I saw to have, I mean, Egypt hosting this summit is very important. This will give us some kind a space that to get some initiatives to be financed by under this summit. Because what I told you, that 100 billion US dollars have been allocated just to mitigate the impact of climate change and global warming. We should benefit from this amount. I mean, have been directed to all developing countries affected by this phenomenon.
Yes, my final question before going to the second report of the daily debate for tonight. Climate change, how can we be investing, getting money out of fighting the climate change that is happening?
All developed countries have allocated, as I told you, that 100 billion US dollars to be directed to the developing countries to benefit from the initiatives will be addressed in the coming summit. Having the summit in Egypt, this will give Egypt a chance to benefit from this, I mean, summit, as well as other African countries that Egypt has been supporting for the last 2 years under His Excellency Abdel Fattah's presidency of the African Union. And I see that he has been supporting all the interests of the African countries, I mean, in the several events around the world. I see this as a kind of great potential for Egypt to benefit from this summit. I mean, to get finance to the initiatives will be addressed in this summit from our side, as well as to direct investment to a green economy as well, renewable energy and waste management, smart cities, all these stuff under sustainable development and what we call green economies.
When do you see the green economy prevailing here in Egypt? As soon as possible, of course.
Actually, we have been focusing that for the last 5 years. I mean, under the Ministry of Environment have been good movement from her side. I mean, the Minister of Environment as well as the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they're trying to get all these efforts being supported by the cabinet, as well as get the finance under the Ministry of International Cooperation, get finance to finance green economy projects. All these stuff, actually, all these initiatives I see are very important in the last few years happened in Egypt.
Yes, Doctor, we'll be going to the second report of the daily debate for tonight, which focuses on one of the statements made by His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi regarding the role of the United Nations, and more specifically in the region, in the Middle East, to be assisting the Palestinians. We will be having more details in the upcoming report.
President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has expressed Egypt's support for the role played by the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, UNRWA, in offering services for Palestinian refugees. The UN Relief Agency is the only mechanism with a humanitarian responsibility towards the Palestinian people, especially in the fields of education and health, the President said during a meeting this week with UNRWA Commissioner General Philippe Lazzarini in Cairo on Saturday. President al-Sisi also said that Egypt always stresses to all regional and international parties the necessity of providing support to UNRWA, particularly amid its current financial crisis and the coronavirus pandemic. The Egyptian president voiced the country's readiness to support some of UNRWA's projects to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinians, especially through the Egyptian initiative to reconstruct the Gaza Strip. During the meeting, Lazzarini highlighted the challenges facing the agency, hailing Egypt's efforts in mobilizing international support so that the UN body can push ahead with efforts to support the Palestinian refugees. He also hailed the country's keenness to improve the living conditions of the Palestinians, especially in the Gaza Strip. The World Bank has estimated that rebuilding Gaza after the latest devastating war will cost up to $485 million.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate. Dr. Ibrahim, Mostafa Ibrahim, as we did see in the past report, the efforts of Egypt in cooperation with the United Nations have been long-standing ever since the establishment of the United Nations itself. How do you see the historic role of Egypt in establishing and cooperating with the United Nations?
Yeah, Egypt, as you said, that has been in a good position under the UN umbrella, starting its establishment in 1945, and this, I mean, we have been supporting all the interest of developing and Arab countries under this umbrella, as you mentioned in the report, the Palestinian refugees under UNRWA. We have been supporting all the Palestinian issues, I mean, under the UN umbrella and other African countries under the Sustainable Development Goals, as well as I mentioned in the first part of this interview, that calling, I mean, the climate change and the global warming and all these issues under all UN institutions, I mean, around the world. And I see Egypt has been using this umbrella is very good, actually, starting when President Sisi came to the power in 2014, and he participated in several meetings of the General Assembly of the UN, discussing many issues regarding economic development, terrorism around the world, refugees around the world, illegal immigrations around the world. All these stuff, I mean, have been discussed under the UN umbrella, and I saw that President Sisi have been working very well, I mean, on these files, actually.
Egypt had a non-permanent seat at the Security Council in 2016 and 2017. What does this say about the security and the stability and the political leadership of Egypt in the past years?
Yeah, as we see that Egypt's playing a very vital role in the region, restabilizing, I mean, the region. We have geotensions around the region. We have tensions in several countries around Egypt, Syria, Yemen, and Libya, and other countries after 2011. Egypt has been a very good role in restabilizing the region and defending the interest of the region, pushing, I mean, finance to restructure or reconstruct these countries again, as we see in Libya, currently in Syria, supporting, I mean, construction activities in these countries. I mean, defending our interest in these countries as well as we see as we saw in Libya, when Egypt had good intervention to defend our interest inside the country, controlling other intervention from other countries in the region. I think protecting our strategic depth around the country is very important from all sides.
Historically, what are the main topics that Egypt was brought forward to be having deliberations at the United Nations, in your opinion?
I mean, since the last century, I mean, the 50s, Egypt has been defending, I mean, the liberation movements inside the continent, Africa and Arab countries, and defending their interest to have their independence and building their own countries, having their own freedom, having their own constitutions, having their own country sovereignty, and all these stuff, I mean, have been tackled down by the Egyptian government. All the presidents came to the power since 50s till now, actually.
In 2016, Egypt managed to be drawing the world's attention through the Security Council and the United Nations to the phenomenon of global terrorism, because we can see nowadays that the mercenaries coming from the Middle East to Ukraine, any conflict that is happening, we can see the same main players taking part in the conflict. So how do you see the importance of Egypt drawing the world's attention to this phenomenon and this problem?
Yeah, I mean, you know that what happened in Egypt after 2011, that's why Egypt focused very much on fighting terrorism, whether locally or regionally, getting the intention of all international institutions to become cooperating to fight this phenomena. Because it's not only the responsibility of one country, it's the responsibility of the whole world. And President Sisi, in several summits and several meetings, several events around the world, raised this issue many times and highlighted that if we don't have kind of cooperation, this we will not succeed to fight such phenomena.
How do you see the performance of the political leadership and more specifically the foreign ministry under the leadership of President Assisi in the past years regarding the ties between Egypt and the international institutions like the United Nations, between Egypt and Africa, the Middle East, and all other countries around the world?
I see it's one of the successful files that we have been, focusing, since Prince Sisi came to power, whether through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Ministry of International Cooperation, as well as Ministry of Finance and other economic ministries. Getting, the whole world attention around what's happening in Egypt and defending our interests, rebalancing the country, and getting the support of all international institutions. These are very important that to tell the whole world that Egypt came again to the scene, and now we are stable, that we are promoting our economy, we are waiting investors to invest in several potential business opportunities. We are still working on enhancing our business environment, still working on restructuring our economy, and we will continue these reforms to show that to the world, to the whole world that Egypt is doing very well in several files, as I mentioned.
Yes, Egypt headed the African Union in one of the past years, and during its role at the United Nations, it managed to be drawing the attention of the world to the African continent and be the voice of Africa and representing Africa. This year, in 2022, Egypt will be hosting the Climate Change Conference, or the COP27, in Sharm el-Sheikh here in Egypt. What can we say in the voice of Africa regarding this issue?
We said that the African continent needs, as President Sisi said before, around $200 billion US to invest in the infrastructure. To mitigate, the health and education circumstances in the country. We want to introduce decent lives for the African citizens. We should promote investment in several areas. Even the digitalization. We should use the benefits of digitalization to enhance the business environment, the economies in the continent, to enhance the cooperation between these countries. Regarding inter-trade and other aspects of cooperation between these countries, using using the funds coming from the developed countries are very important. Using the international platforms to raise the issues that affecting the African citizens. That's why this summit will be one of the most important things that to raise the issue and raise the awareness about what are the needs of the African continent, such as like the examples that I mentioned to you.
During the upcoming COP27 summit, do you believe that we'll be having maybe decisions that will be implemented on the ground for the sake of the global citizen and more specifically for the Egyptians and the Africans?
Sure. As I told you that the $100 billion US that have been allocated, to decrease the impact of global warming and climate change will be directed to the vulnerable countries, among which are the African continents and Egypt as well. That's why we should benefit from this. All these funds allocated to mitigate the impact of the global warming and the climate change, using these funds directed to several initiatives, whether in Egypt and other African countries. That's why I see this platform, the coming platform, is very important to address such challenges and such initiatives to be financed by many donors and many international institutions. That are very important actually.
What are the reforms that Egypt proposed to be having at the United Nations in the past years?
Just whether the economic, the fiscal and monetary reforms that have been addressed to all international institutions, among which the UN, and the coming on the ground, what we are trying to achieve regarding the Egyptian citizens, the decent lives, and other projects in enhancing, empowering women as well. From the economic point of view, in addition to pay, to make, the digitalization much faster, and all these issues will be, as well as again to be reassured in this conference again to the whole world that Egypt is doing very well.
Egypt has a long history in terms of settling conflicts in Africa, in the Middle East, and of course in the peacekeeping missions as well of the United Nations. How do you see the most important mission that Egypt undertook in the past years ever since the establishment of the United Nations?
I see this, a normal, role for the Egyptian government, for the last, 50 years. We have tried to help many countries to grow and to stabilize their countries and to defend their interests and to solve conflicts inside, whether inside or around inside the region as well, between countries as face to face, and whether inside the countries, between the movements inside the country as well. All these stuff, Egypt have been trying to solve, under the African Union umbrella or the international institutions umbrella. I see a very good activity that Egypt has been doing for the last, years, especially under President Sisi role.
Yes, mentioning Africa during the leadership of Egypt to the African Union and of course the political leadership under President Sisi, there was an initiative in Africa called Silencing the Guns.
Yeah.
How do you see the idea itself to be having the idea of silencing the guns in Africa and the initiatives that we had here in Egypt for maybe Virus C, and to be replicating the same idea and the same success of it in Africa? What does this say about the relationship between Egypt and the continent?
Experience in fighting some diseases like virus C, as you mentioned. We try to move our experience in solving, conflicts with other countries, conflict inside the countries, using our Ministry of Foreign Affairs umbrella, as well as our intervention under the African Union, under His Excellency President Sisi, when he was the President of the African Union. And he was trying to defend all the interests of the African Union, solving the conflicts around, trying to support the development in these countries, because achieving developments will, decrease the conflicts inside the continent. If you take care of the African citizens, this will, you will produce to them very good lives. Then they will start to decrease the conflicts inside, whether inside each country or around the continent.
Egypt has always been very vocal about the Palestinian cause in cooperation with the United Nations. How do you see the efforts of Egypt historically to be helping Palestine and the Palestinians under the umbrella of the United Nations as well?
Yeah, as you said, that we used the UN umbrellas for many years to defend the Palestinians' interest and achieving the peace process. We called many times. When the conflict rising several times. The region, they started to intervene and to decrease. The conflict impact on both sides. Started. To help the Egyptian, the Palestinian citizens. Sending to them. Commodities and other stuff from that to help them mitigate their life challenges as well from this point of view. In addition to that, we used all international umbrellas to defend their interest, having their political stability, political interest, and as well as directing support and financial support to the Palestinian Authority as well from that time.
President Sisi mentioned in the past couple of days during the meeting of President Sisi and the UNRWA commissioner here in the country that Egypt is willing to be alleviating the suffering of the Palestinians as much as possible. What does this say about the relationship between Egypt and Palestine and the cause itself, that Egypt is capable of handling the cause?
Egypt is trying to use, the good relations with the Palestinians from one side. We used to have their support arm and all international institutions from one side. The other side, using the UNRWA as a financing mechanism that directing their money to help Palestinian refugees around the world who are suffering from being refugees. Who left their homes. Living around the world. These are from education side, health side. All these services are being financed by UNRWA, supporting the Palestinians around the world. That's why Egypt trying to help. Even the donors inside, the contributors inside this institution, to help the UNRWA continue in supporting and performing its activities around the world regarding the Palestinian refugees.
Yes, over the years, how do you see the efforts of Egypt to be reaching a just solution for the Palestinian-Israeli conflict?
Egypt's trying to have kind of balanced approach between both parties. We know that we believe in the interest of the Palestinians. I mean, and they're trying to achieve their sake, having their own, I mean, stability, having on their land. I mean, having the two countries living side by side without any conflict in peace. I mean, protecting both citizens and without having any conflict, all these, I mean, are affecting, I mean, the stability and the peace process in the region. That's why Egypt is focusing very much on being as a kind of a peace mediator between both parties in several events.
Mm-hmm. How to be eliminating terrorism globally was an Egyptian initiative, an Egyptian idea that actually drew the attention of the world to the conflict, not just in Palestine and Israel, but in every other conflict zone as well, that we can see happening nowadays, even in Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah, just look, we saw many terrorism, I mean, events happened in Europe in the last few years. In each event, Egypt was highlighting that fighting terrorism is not, cannot be, I mean, a responsibility of one country, it's a responsibility of the all countries. That's why, I mean, it's happening in Egypt, it's happening in Britain, it's happening in other countries. So it doesn't have borders, that every country should exchange information about this phenomena, put, I mean, commitments together to fight this phenomena, whether I mean, regionally under the international institutions. All these, I mean, efforts should be gathered, I mean, very cooperative to reach, I mean, the goal of fighting terrorism around the world.
Yes, the United Nations this week hailed the efforts of Egypt in terms of climate change, as well as we did speak about the COP27, which will be taking place here in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh in November of 2022. How do you see the future potential cooperation between Egypt and the United Nations, especially in terms of fighting climate change and the preservation of the environment?
As I mentioned to you, that Egypt has been focusing, I mean, about the green economy, whether inside the country or regionally or globally. It has become one of the vital issues that is being tackled by all countries. Green economy projects, I mean, whether keep protection, the oceans, rivers and water resources management, renewable energies, all these projects have been, I mean, on the top priority of all agendas that of the UN summits or other summits, OECD summits or G20 summits. We see all these, I mean, issues have become on the top of these agendas. That's why, I mean, Egypt has been focusing for the last 5 years in defending the interests of Egypt and the African continent in these areas: sustainable development goals, the living standards of people, fighting terrorism, and enhancing the health and education sectors, supporting digitalization and use the information technology in achieving these goals. That's why, I mean, all issues have become very important to being put on the Egyptian agenda as well as the world agenda.
How can the climate change affect Egypt on the ground?
As I mentioned to you, that Egypt, we can see that one of the affected countries by the climate change. It didn't contribute much, I mean, to the global warming. It's kind of that we were receiving the impact. That's why we should receive a benefit from this summit, I mean, to gain, I mean, importance and to direct some funds to protect the impact on the Egyptian coast. I mean, like what I said, Alexandria and other initiatives that will be submitted to this summit. I see it will be a very good chance to submit all what we have, all what we think about how to decrease the impact on the beaches, on other water resources as well in the region.
Yes, Dr. Ibrahim, Mostafa Ibrahim, the former senior advisor to the Minister of Investment. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate. And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching and goodbye.